Instead, what we want to be trying to do is we want to try and solve this problem using algebra strategies. So now let's talk about skipping the guess and check table. What would an algebraic strategy kind of look like? What would we do? And I'm going to break it down into kind of 5 steps for us in class. And I'm going to kind of stick to this pattern. When I read these word problems, step 1, put a little box here. Step 1 would be to read the problem and pull out the important facts. Let's get the facts out of the problem. So I'm going to write step 1 is the facts. What did we read in this problem that was super important? So sometimes you have to kind of go back and reread it a few times. You know, you start to forget the story a little bit. But what do we have? Alice and Bob have 100 songs on iTunes. So that's a fact, 100 songs total. There's something we could write down. And another fact might be, I just kind of got to go through my sentences again. If Bob bought 3 times as many songs as Alice, so 3 times as many. So Bob 3 times Alice. There's a fact. And that's really the most important information. So step 1, we write down kind of the numbers that were important so we don't forget. Then we move on to step 2, and this is where we start pulling in some algebra. Step 2 is we need to define some variables. What are we trying to solve for? So step 2 is define variables. Define variables. What are we trying to figure out? What are we guessing for? What are we solving for? And you remember in the guess and check table, we were guessing for how many songs Alice had and how many songs Bob had. So Alice and Bob those are our variables. Those were our guesses. So when I go to define my variables, I'm thinking, let's use something easy like A for Alice and B for Bob. But we need to write that down. We need to say let A equal Alice. I'm going to say Alice's number of songs. Let A equal Alice's number of songs. Let B equal Bob's number of songs. Because that's what we were guessing for. Let A equal Alice's number of songs. Let B equal Bob's number of songs. I could have said let X equal Alice and let Y equal Bob. I didn't have to use A and B. I just chose them because I think I'll remember A and B easily. A for Alice, B for Bob. So that's step 2, define some variables. Now we need step 3. It's great that we have variables. Now we need some equations. We need to figure out what can we use to solve this problem. So step 3 is we write some equations. So for equations, because there's 2 variables, we're probably also going to end up with 2 equations. And a lot of times, this is the step that everyone gets real stuck on. It is the hardest part of learning this process. So you go back and you read the problem again, or you look at the facts. Remember, Alice and Bob have 100 songs on iTunes together. That was a fact. We listed that here, 100 songs total. So I'm going to turn that into one of my equations. And I'm thinking of it like this. Alice, all her music, plus Bob, all of Bob's music, equals 100 songs total. Okay, there's one equation. Makes sense. Alice plus Bob equals 100. The other equation is going to use the other fact. Bob has 3 times as many as Alice. So Bob has 3 times as many of Alice. Bob equals 3 times Alice. 3 times Alice. When we were guessing, we multiplied Alice's by 3. So Bob equals 3 times Alice. And there's my equations. Perfect. All right. So now we go on to step 4. And step 4 is the algebra piece of this. Now that we have variables and equations, we're going to solve our equations. So step 4 is solve this problem. Now when we go to solve it, we need to pick a strategy. So we have multivariable equations. We have A's and B's mixed together. So 2 multivariable equations. And I'm going to use a new technique today called the substitution method. Substitution. And substitution works like this. If I have 2 equations, I can take the simpler one, b equals 3a. I'm going to write it over here. If b equals 3a, A, 3 times A. Then I'm going to circle B. B is equal to 3A. Sometimes I like to circle them. In class, a lot of times I say we're bubbling them. It's not really a mathematical term, but I'm bubbling B and bubbling 3A, and these two bubbles are equal to each other. They're the exact same thing. And then I have this other equation, A plus B equals 100. Well, in the other equation, what matches one of our bubbles? Well, the B does. B and B are the same things. And what's B really equal to? It's equal to 3A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that B, that bubble, and I'm going to replace it with a 3A. It's the same thing as 3A. B is equal to 3A, so I'm going to substitute in 3A so that I have A plus B is now A plus 3A equals 100. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm replacing it so that this equation only has A's, no more B's, no more multivariable, because now I know how to solve it. Now what I'm going to do is put a line down the middle of the equal sign, just like that. Move the camera so you can see this. And basically I'm going to go through my steps here a little bit. So going through my steps, A plus 3A. Well, there's nothing in front of the parenthesis that I need to distribute. So why don't I just rewrite this as A plus 3A equals 100. I don't really need that parenthesis right now. And A plus 3A makes 4A's equals 100. Oh, this is a pretty simple equation for us to solve. We know we just got to divide by 4, and A is equal to 100 divided by 4 is 25. A is equal to 25. And sure enough, if you remember, let's go back up and look at this again. When we did our guess and check table, how many songs did Alice end up having? 25. So here's another way we figured out this problem. A is equal to 25. Now, I haven't solved for Bob yet, so I'm not done with step 4. Here I did all this work to solve for A. So I'm going to write up here, I solved for A. I'll just mark it off here. And this, basically, this list is my work for solving for A. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to solve for B. Solve for B. And to solve for B, it's a little bit simpler. We're going to go back and pick one of the equations. I'm going to pick either one of these works. So you can pick either one. You can pick A plus B equals 100 or B equals 3A. But you got to go back and choose one. I'm going to choose B equals 3A. Because I'm trying to solve for B, and I want to know what does B equal. Well, B equals 3A. Well, what did we decide A is equal to? I guess that's the next question. What's A? Well, we think A is 25 down here. So we are going to put 25 where the A is. We're going to substitute it in. That's why it's called substitution. So 3A is now 325. B is now equal to 3 times 25. And 3 times 25 is 75. B is equal to 75. Now I got my two answers. A is 25, B is 75. Totally matches what we had in our guess and check table way up here at the start, 25 and 75. And for sure, if I have a guess and check table and all of this algebra that we did, this is level 4 advanced work. I can still kind of step it up a little bit more, and I can do one more thing. So I'm going to do one more thing now. I did all this work. I'm going to do a step 5. I'm going to write step number 5. And this is kind of the extra step, but I like getting anything extra in here that I can. And this extra step is to check our answer and maybe write a statement, write a sentence. Check and sentence. Step 5 is our extra step. Check and see, did we actually get it right? So remember, A plus B equaled 100. That was one of our equations. And our other equation was B equals 3A. So now that we have our answers, we're going to make sure both of these equations work. A is now equal to 25, and B is now equal to 75. And does 25 plus 75 equal 100? We got to check it. 25 and 75 is for sure 100. 100 equals 100. Check, that works. Then we try the other one. B equals 3a. Well, b is 75. And 3a would be 3 parentheses. I'm going to bubble it up. And where the a goes is now 25. And 3 times 25, yep, that's 75 equals 75. Check and check. So if both equations worked, I know I did all my math correct, and now I can write my sentence. Alice was A, she bought 25 songs. Alice bought 25 songs, and Bob bought, B equals 75. Bob bought 75 songs. And we're done. You might be looking at this saying, whoa, that was a lot of work. Those steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 was more work than the guess and check. And you're probably right for this problem. But again, I picked an easy word problem. Pretty soon those word problems are going to get so complicated that you're not going to want to do a giant guess and check problem. You know some of those homework problems where you had those huge guess and check tables and you kind of got sick of guessing? Algebra would have made your life easier in those problems. Using some variables and going through and actually using like substitution method to make it simpler to solve would have been easier. So this chapter, this is what we're working on. When do I use a guess and check table, and when can I use algebra? And we want to encourage using algebra because we're in an algebra class. So keep watching some substitution videos so you can get the hang of this down. Thanks, guys.